Wake the dead.
Wake the dead. Wake the dead.
With Sean McCann.
Can't it be both?
Not only that, but I could spin it the other way. Medieval Christians believed that the actual center of the earth, the universe, was hell.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah,
And
like
how in
everything
the
is
world?
drawn down into it, like it's this magnet pulling you down. You know?
Right. So when they got off center, it wasn't really it wasn't really a loss because they didn't consider center to be most important.
Right. Flat Earth was created in the 1800s or whatever, like the 1700s. They were pushing flat Earth back then for political reasons, and
I don't know the history. Yeah, I don't know the history of flat Earth, and I'm totally mystified by it because like going back to a previous belief, there wasn't. This is the only era in history in which people have fervently believed that the Earth is flat.
Exactly. Yes, even through like the ancient Greeks, like all the way, it's always been thought of as round. You know,
The Chinese believed the Earth was flat.
Oh, they did. Okay.
But not like fervently.
Right.
Not like when they heard the Earth was round, it's not like they went, "No, I disagree.
I want to fight over it." Right.
No.
Yeah. And it seems as though it's, there's this building of knowledge and understanding, and this would build on this piece of knowledge, and this, we're trying to figure out truth, truth discovery of civilization. And then all of a sudden there's this mind meme or whatever that's easier than thinking it through and understanding the science. It's just easier to just be like, I don't believe it. Greetings and welcome to Wake the Dead. Today we are pleased to have returning guest, my brother Jim, Dr. Jim Pivarski. Welcome, Jim. Here you are. You are a returning guest. You are Doctor of Particle Physics. You've worked at the Fermi Lab. You've worked at the CERN. You have your entire career have had part of your time, a portion of your time, I think it's like at least 40% dedicated towards physics and continuing, right? Like when you were full-time in the physics when you were helping build CERN and all this stuff. And now I guess you're doing computer programming now. And but in order to keep up with the physics, you got to devote some of your time just to maintain the knowledge that's being gathered. There's all this new information. Is that the case? Do I understand that correctly?
Yes, I'm not doing any physics analyses now, which is how we usually count doing physics, not doing physics. So I'm not actually working on any physics paper or anything like that. Right. But I'm in the community and I know what people talk about because I'm writing their software tools.
So that's an integral part. You are an integral part. I mean, your contributions, if you weren't there thinking it, then they would have to have somebody else very smart doing that job, because that is a very important piece of it. They need the computers to calculate everything that happens in these collider devices.
Very much so.
Right.
But there's quite a lot of us in the developing computing.
Right. And that's the cutting edge of computing too, right? I mean, you guys were, CERN itself was integral in the beginning of the World Wide Web, that and DARPA and, the governments of the world. But this computing is an integral part. It's a big part of this.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, the new thing for us is not being the only the only ones at the computing frontier. For most of the history of particle physics, which I would start, right after World War II, 1946, 47, 48, with the first big accelerators.
Right.
There were smaller accelerators before that, so you have to put a cut somewhere. But right then, physicists were using the first digital computers, the descendants of ENIAC and such, and some physicists, left academia to sell the first computers. So they were there at the beginning.
Right. There was a lot of potential in these computer things.
Yeah, exactly.
They were probably smart to jump ship. I bet they're making a lot more money.
Well, they weren't good businessmen, those particular ones.
Okay.
No, they got eaten by IBM.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's an evil monster, and we all know that.
Yeah, that didn't work out for them. But no, the new thing in our field is not being the only ones pushing the computing frontiers, because post-web,
Yeah. Now you can have the genius and creativity of everybody, not just the physics community that's working on the colliders. So that's good.
Yeah.
And like we've jumped in leaps and bounds, in our computing. Now there's quantum computing, which is, I'm sure you know all about that. I can't even begin to understand it. Maybe that's another show. Maybe we can talk about that someday in the future.
Yeah.
You like we said, if anybody wants to learn more about you, we talked a lot about your history and how you came to be where you're at in the last show. So please look up the last show of Wake the Dead, where Jim Pivarski was our guest. So moving forward from that, I'd like to get into some of the ideas and talk to you about, really, I guess, science in general and how we uptake the information. There's this current phenomenon that everybody should know about it by now if they don't. But there is this craze happening, I guess you could call it, where people believe the earth is flat and they cannot be convinced otherwise. It's become like a religious, almost, the way that they relate to it is almost like an ego like they see it as their worldview would be crushed and destroyed. And they also have, it's like, and they identify with it. Yeah. And they also have this idea that they are more, like they know more information than the rest, and they have achieved this knowledge that others just can't seem to grasp because they don't have an open enough mind for that.
Yeah.
And it's like, the science is there, and it's, like you said to me when we were talking about this, it doesn't matter what they think, the earth is round anyway. It doesn't really. So it's kind of tragic that these people are denying truth, and for their own ego satiation, I guess. I don't know, like to calm themselves, and it's like a pacifier in a sense. This is how I interpret it, and I know I'm pissing off a lot of listeners, a lot of people in the community that I'm in, that people that talk about stuff on podcasts and talk about what they think is the truth and what they found to be the truth. There's a lot of people that believe this flat earth idea, and it splits them, it divides them away from the rest of us in the community, because they think they know. And if you're not open-minded enough to get it like they do, then you're one of them. You're the enemy, and you're promoting this lie of globe earth as if it's going to hurt somebody, and it's so it's sad for me because people that I care about, and like it's just a topic that I can't even talk about because I know that it will turn into a huge argument, and then there will be it will create inside, even if they say that they're still my friend, they think inside like, oh, how could this be this person that they look at me and think, maybe they think I'm smart, and how could I believe the round earth, and so
Yeah.
this phenomenon is happening, and you have spent your entire career deciphering what is truth with evidence. I mean, so you have come across the dying of false theories, and the acceptance of truth. I wanted to maybe talk to you a bit about this idea, and what it is like. How is it that we can talk to these people again and maybe heal that gap?
Yeah. Okay. That last part, I don't know, because the psychology is very different.
Right.
From just working through, like the way that a scientist works through different theories. You say failed theories, but it's almost suggesting like you could count them.
Right. It's endless.
It's like a whole field, and only one little spot in the middle, or not the middle, but one little spot somewhere.
Yeah, the needle in the haystack.
Yeah, and it's a continuous process of looking for this.
Exactly. Like that's your life. You work for these accelerators that discover. I mean, that's what everybody's like, oh, why do they have a CERN? And I'm sorry I interrupted you. I got a lot of flack from our last show of people that were saying, how can you believe that CERN isn't some portal that's, opening up to the dark ones on the other side and shit? And I'm like, yeah, there's no evidence. There's no reason for me to believe that. And the reason they believe that is they're told, and they think, oh, that makes sense. It's run by dark magicians, which I agree with. The people that are, at the top of governments, they think weird things and they do weird rituals, but I still am not going to believe that CERN is opening portals for because you described to me that the words that these physicists are using, they say a black hole, but it's not really the same as what's up in space. It's not the same black hole. It's a different language.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's a bad choice of words.
Right. And it creates this type of confusion where people are like, oh, black hole, it could eat the earth, and it doesn't work like that. And so I'm like, I believe in the dark magicians doing the dark things, and I believe that they are controlling the world through mind control and ritual magic to train people's minds into believing they're slaves and all of this. I believe all of that stuff, but that doesn't mean that I have to believe the earth is flat and the queen is actually a reptile. Like it's not all in one bin. So you got to be able to decipher and figure truth. And so like you working for this device that takes nature, it observes nature and gives you results of what happened, so like that is close to truth. That is your path of finding truth. And so please continue. I'm sorry, I talked too much.
Sure. Well, there's certainly at ground level, we decide how to design the beam and the detector, and yeah, it's not a portal.
Right. Yeah.
And so actually some of these things, like let's just to focus on the flat Earth.
Mm-hmm.
You asked earlier in sort of preparation for this show if how we would how one would argue around Earth, and
Right.
it's kind of already been done, and almost don't need to have to do it.
Exactly.
Because the choice, in this, when I said there's this field of all these possible theories, and then somewhere one of those is true, and we're trying to find it, and error bars are never zero as we look for this thing. It's just odd that we're zooming in over here, and then the flat Earth thing is way over there.
Yeah.
And it's like, what?
How did that happen?
Yeah, like even if let's say that it was a historical theory, like let's say that instead of talking about flat Earth, let's say that we were talking about geocentrism. The Earth is the center of the universe. It's like,
right.
Okay, yes, people thought that for thousands of years. There was an argument about that when it was changing, and they had reasons on both sides. But even during all that time, there, with Copernicus and Galileo, nobody then thought the Earth was flat.
Right.
It was like,
Right.
I can find cultures on Earth, pre-scientific cultures, who, if you ask them what shape the Earth they think the Earth is, they'll describe something that's kind of flat with mountains. So it's like the default view if you haven't got around, if you haven't traveled distances of at least 1,000 miles on sailing ships, and
right.
But as soon as you start doing that, as soon as you're going around on the Aegean Sea and the Mediterranean, and start looking around, yeah, it's round.
Right. It's apparent, and and yes, everybody has argued it already. Like, we don't really need to. All that information is there. It's like it's blind to them. They don't want to see it. I think that's part of the programming too. And when you said that it's way over there, where you guys have been science is like, okay, this is true, so they extrapolate that out. Well, this should be true too. So they're looking in the same area, and they keep combining, keep gaining truth upon truth and narrowing it into this. Okay, it's in this area of the field, and then flat Earth way over there. I think that's on purpose. I think that it was intended to do this psychologically to people. And these, like I said earlier, the dark magicians that do the mind control, it's a mind control device. Like, if you don't believe what I believe, then I'm going to fight you, and if people are busy fighting each other, then they're never going to rise up and fight the masters that are taking all their, taking their will away and using them as slaves. It's the oldest tactic, and it's happening everywhere, all the time, and we see it in politics with the dialectic and the left and the right, and that way everybody's fighting each other, and oh, well, it's my fault for voting. I better vote harder next time. It's like, it's all this mind control device to keep us from recognizing that we could stand up and say no, So this being way over there, it causes such a strife in between. And then people, talk about maybe the strife that we had when we were recognizing that the geocentrism was not true. The way that the wandering stars, they make these weird patterns. Like, why is Venus shaped like a star rose petal? Why does it do that? Why wouldn't it go around us like normal? Like everything else. Please.
Oh yeah. Oh, and that transition. They were because that was part of this. We're close, and we're having constructive arguments about what's almost true. What people will key on from that history is the dramatic parts where Copernicus's book was forbidden. Galileo was under house arrest. another guy, I think his name was Bruno. He was burned at the stake. He was burned at the stake for his religious heresies, not for believing the Earth was. Yeah.
So it was treacherous to not believe the correct thing. It's getting close to that these days with the way that everybody hates each other, but it can be life-threatening if you don't believe properly.
I meant the geocentrism part was not the reason he was burned at the stake.
Well, I understand that, right? But still, he didn't believe the way, and the masters were like, okay, you don't believe the religion we want you to, so off you go, get up there, let them. Yeah,
that's pretty serious, right?
Yeah.
But the geocentrism, heliocentrism, Earth center, sun the center, that was a constructive argument, and at the time that they were working it out, the evidence was not obvious. There were, if I were put at that time and I had all the evidence that they did, I should think it's quite possible that the Earth is the center of the universe.
Right.
The Copernicus's model didn't fit. It didn't agree in the details.
But he hadn't worked out the entire thing yet. I mean, he was just starting it, right?
Right. He was missing some pieces. Right. The measurements got a lot better after, between Copernicus and Galileo. Kepler's idea of elliptical orbits was key.
Right.
The thing about Venus making this cool rose petal was described by, say it's a circular orbit, and there's a little circular orbit going around that orbit. And
right. Okay. So there was an imaginary thing that it was also going around, orbiting.
Right.
Right.
Imaginary or made of glass, depending on your point of view.
Or made of dark matter, right? Like what we're thinking now, because you got to plug something into the equation to make it work, right?
Yeah. Or imaginary. They
were good at that back then.
That it was making this kind of shape. And actually, if you get at it, if you have epicycles upon epicycles, these little things, they were on their third level of epicycle at that point in order to fit the data, because the data is getting very precise. And then, it's kind of like, well, why would the orbit be a circle with a little circle on it with a little circle on it?
Right.
That's getting odd. But actually, if you follow that and you make an infinite series of them, that is how we today approximate arbitrary functions. So actually, the mathematics of epicycles is pretty close to what we would today call the Fourier series. And it's used all the time for characterizing an arbitrary shape.
Huh.
So in a way, it's not wrong,
Right. So the exercise of the mathematics was still useful in the future, even though it wasn't what they were trying to figure out. They still they discovered a process of calculation that is still useful.
Yeah.
And I don't know what you were telling me, what some of those words I didn't understand, but I still get the gist of it of how
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. I made a visualization. It would be hard for me to go and find it, but that you can take a circle and have a little circle on it, and you're going around this. You only need two of them to make an ellipse. If the little circle is going half as fast as the big one, then the point on the end can go like an ellipse.
Right. I see.
So just with two of them, you get Kepler's ellipses.
Interesting.
So
that's great. So the people are they're on this trail, and they're getting this math, and they've understood that it's not exactly this type, but the ellipse helps to make it fit in reality. So now, when they discover the ellipse, what happens with the argument that's ensuing?
It continued. He continued, and what was happening through that was, at first, the evidence seemed to be in the favor of the geocentrists, and most of their evidence, like when Aristotle in ancient Greece was arguing for it, his arguments were things like, well, if the Earth was spinning, then birds would fall off the trees, which seems pretty weak today. But
that's the kind of shit that Flat Earth talks about now. We can get into it if you want. I know a lot of silly things that they say. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, let's continue with this. But
yes.
There's a lot of stuff like that in retrospect you think, well, that was never really a strong argument to start with. But let me put it this way: in the 1500s, 1400s, before Copernicus, most people just believed that the Earth was center, in a large part because Aristotle said, and
right, because it's taught to them that way, and they just they just continue thinking. Okay,
right. So it was kind of like for the average. I don't want to say guy in the street because really the people who were arguing about this were wealthy. Right.
Yeah, they could sit around and worry about this kind of thing where everybody else is trying to eat, and farm. Yeah.
Right. But it seemed at first to be very in favor of geocentrism, and then the heliocentrism was weirdos like Copernicus.
Right.
And then you press them to prove their theory, and Copernicus couldn't prove it. Okay.
Yeah.
And then better observations, the evidence mounts, and actually along the way, it wasn't just two world systems. There were alternatives. There was like this plane of infinitely many theories.
Right.
More than just two were proposed.
Right. As there should be, I guess. I mean, with imagination, human imagination, we should have as many as we can, in a degree as we can, right?
Yeah, and I don't remember how those other ones differ, but then the evidence for heliocentrism got stronger. The ideas like, well, the orbits aren't circles but ellipses really simplified that, because I think Copernicus still used epicycles. So epicycles on epicycles, but the sun's in the center. And the ellipse was a really nice simplification. Simple doesn't mean true, but it was like, oh, there's something here. The fact that perfectly fit ellipses is kind of interesting, and instead of them being the arbitrary shape that you need many epicycles for. And then eventually there was a reason for the ellipses, which is whenever you have bodies universally, whenever all bodies in the universe gravitationally attract to each other, this is what you get. Right. Just by letting two things go, you get any kind of conic section, which is a set of mathematical shapes. Ellipse is one of those.
Okay.
And so
that creates the ellipse. So like then, okay, now we have a reason for this ellipse shape. Let's go with that. Right?
Yeah, it gets stronger and stronger, so that at the end of this whole process, which is a few centuries, then being a geocentrist now would be really hard, because it's like, well, it's this thing, this thing, this thing, this thing. You have to have some kind of way to explain it. And give it up.
And that's where the imagination comes in. Then they come up with all these, like, Flat Earth is trying to put holes in this dam that they got. They got this imaginary wall of truth that's holding back the rushing water of reality, and there are all these holes plopping out, and they got to plug it with all these weird ideas, and none of them fit together. Like, they say the moon has its own light, like it makes its own light like a sun, and it has phases like it's, and then they say that gravity doesn't exist, and then when they're explaining it to me, they'll tell me, oh, it's electromagnetism that holds the particles of the floor together to keep you from falling through the floor. And I say, what's the force pulling you through the floor? and then they get real mad. You know,
Yeah.
so like, you know, I've been told by many of these people, like, you know, told me to kill myself, and like they hate me, and like, and I'm just trying to show them like the holes in their theories. Like, what, you know, if the earth is a flat disk, why is it that people that live at the tip of South America see different stars than the people up on, you know, up near Alaska?
Yeah.
It's, and they can't, there's nothing there to explain it.
I'm sure there's been this whole, you know, this long thing, you know,
right,
all arguments and
they make up these things to plug them in. They're like, oh, this makes sense, and then like, but they're not thinking from a scientific perspective. They are way over there, while you guys, the scientists, are here thinking about this. They are off there doing their own thing. It's circle jerking each other.
That is the difference. That through the whole geocentric, heliocentric, as far as the evidence is concerned, it could have gone either way, and it ended up being a constructive argument because, you know, with all the personalities and drama that happened anyway, you know, around it for political and social reasons too, but ultimately it was a constructive argument because they were all banging around the center, and the you know, the truth was somewhere in that big bubble of uncertainty. It was different from, you know, having, you know, shrunk the bounds of uncertainty. Okay, so it's somewhere over here, and then just decide, okay, I'm going to be way over there. If you just decide that I'm going to be way over there, so far outside the bounds of uncertainty,
they just decide
to be had.
Yeah, how now, can you even? It's like they choose not to be in the argument. It's like,
yes, right. That's right. I'm going to leave the room and do
right. And then, but they still claim they have truth, and then they yell at others for not having truth, and like, you don't, your mind is too closed off to know, like, I'm better than you. They have this, like, it's another ego gratification. Like, I have this truth, and I can attain spiritual, you know, heights of whatever. And it's sad because, you know, we're all family here, and we're all spirits and flesh. Like, just because you believe something else, like, I'm not going to say that person who's a flat earther can't be spiritually connected, and like, we're all human, right? You know, and so like, I'm trying to help people to remember that we're, you know, everybody's a brother, everybody's a sister, and like, we're all trying to be here to know the truth, and, you know, look around, because like Jim was saying here, that, you know, the scientists are looking over here, and there's probably a reason for that. And if you can, you know, read and, you know, give the attention and time to why the scientists are thinking that over here, maybe you can venture into this truth realm from the fantasy realm of, you know, I want to believe it's fake. You know, a lot of time, like, a lot of the reasons people say the earth must be flat is because NASA is a bunch of Nazis and they're lying to us. And that might be true. Yes, NASA is Nazis. Okay. They might be giving you false images of the earth. Okay. That doesn't mean it has to be flat. You know, they use these type of, there's another one where Rockefeller put all the books in the schools to promote the globe earth theory. That must be why Rockefeller put all the books in the public schools. And maybe it's to make the children slaves. Maybe there's more things that they changed in the book than just that one fact of like globe is flat.
Even then, I mean, the textbooks are not like pushing the point that the earth is round, because 50 years ago you didn't need to.
Right. Yeah. It's just accepted truth. Right. Yeah.
But also, you know, like, you don't need NASA. You don't need like it's, you know, actually, so if there was none of this history, if someone just came up to me and there's the first time I ever heard someone say, the Earth is flat, probably the first thing I would say is, well, have you ever seen any pictures from space? And then, then we go into the NASA as Nazis. Okay, well,
Yeah.
So it was just the easiest evidence I could just grasp at is that, well, we've been in space.
Right.
The second easiest evidence you can grasp at is, sailing ships going over the edge. And I know they must have some explanation for that.
They
too.
do. Yeah.
But
go ahead.
Yeah, usually, actually, when getting back to like what scientists do, we're not going to be comfortable with a. By the way, do you hear a bunch of background noise? Is that a problem?
We do, but we can still hear you.
Yeah.
Please excuse this. He's in the lobby of a hotel right now, and so he's traveling, and we don't have a quiet place to record. But we can still hear your voice, and it's all fine. It's coming through loud and clear.
And they're just
viewers. Everybody, please excuse it, and it'll move past in a minute. So anyway.
So within this narrow it down. Now I've gone and lost my train of thought.
Yeah, we were talking about how in 50 years ago we didn't have to argue about and then it's become like it was accepted knowledge, and I was using the idea of people hate Rockefeller, so therefore it all must be lies. Everything is lies, just like NASA. It's because they're Nazis, and they're lying about it, whatever. It must mean that it's flat, right? Because that's the only other option. So I mean, and their distrust of authority. Like, I'm anarchist. I'm in anarchist communities. There's a lot of them that think like, of course must be flat because they've been lying to us,
Yeah.
And I know they've been lying to us.
It wasn't an authority pushing for round Earth. It wasn't an authority.
Right.
It was a thing that there's a lot of different avenues to find that out.
Yes.
Find that out different ways, and it wasn't an issue. You could pick any other like obviously true thing, like we have feet at the bottom of our bodies instead of the top. And
but your perspective, what if we walk upside down and really my feet are the top of my body, but we've been told by authority to go the other way? Whoa, maybe that.
And someone comes up to me with an argument like that, I'm kind of stuck. I'm like,
right.
Well, I can't like convince you. Problem.
Right. Yeah. And so the division ensues, and then it's just like, and then when you try to say something to them, like I had a conversation with one of my good friends, and from high school. He wasn't one of these guys that I hang out with now, and I was trying to explain to him about how in the Vietnam War, the CIA and the military were packing the body bags full of heroin and shipping it home to America to sell on the streets. And he just didn't want that information. He didn't want to believe it. He's like, no, that's not true. He said to me, well, you believe 9/11 is an inside job. And he just sat back, put his feet up, and like
that's it.
Yeah, that's okay. You're crazy. I don't have to listen to you anymore. And first of all, 9/11 was a globalist job. It wasn't just America doing it to itself, but still, it's a wall. So now if I'm trying to tell somebody that's my friend, the Federal Reserve is a slavery system, money is slavery and whatever, statism is bad, and they can't take that information from me because they know that I am a Santa baller, globe earth, whatever they think of me. And so they're just going to not take the information. And regular people like you, might be talking to one of these flat Earth people, and they might be trying to explain to you about how the Federal Reserve and the money system is slavery and all of this, but you look at them and be like, oh, but you believe in flat Earth. You must be crazy. Everything you must say must be fake. Like,
Well,
you
no.
know, I know, but you're an open-minded guy. But
No,
that's it.
you can
Go
take these things a la carte. A
Well,
person's
we should, right?
Yeah. Maybe get into like how scientists argue with each other. You were saying earlier about the dam and trying to patch it up.
Right.
Scientific theories go through this too. When new, let's say there's an established scientific theory, new evidence seems to go against it. Then we kind of go into, this, I want to say a quantum state. I want to say multiple beliefs at once.
Mm-hmm.
Where, okay.
Because the first belief is shattered, and that allows people to believe something else, right?
That we still hold on to the first belief.
Oh, okay.
While also considering new beliefs.
Right.
That's what it means to have like an uncertainty band.
Okay.
That, okay, let's patch up the old theory. Let's, take the old theory and say, for whatever reason, this and that and this and that, and like,
try to plug the holes of it.
Plug the holes.
Right.
Plug the holes while also trying to think of something new at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes the plugged in holes was the right thing.
Oh.
Sometimes it was not.
Yeah.
So it works this way.
But all the plugged in holes have to fit with each other.
That's right.
That's rare to make that happen. Because I mean,
depends on what you mean plugged in holes.
Well, I guess like with flat Earth, they have to say that the moon has its own light, but then that has to jive with the other hole that they've plugged, and like all the other one, and they never really mesh. Like, and each flat earther picks and chooses which way they're going to argue, and some of them believe that really we're just a big puddle and there's like more land beyond Antarctica. Some people believe that Antarctica is the edge, there's nothing, and then they argue between each other. It's oh my god, dude.
Yeah. Well, these kinds of arguments and plugging holes and arguments and like working out, that part is fine.
It's healthy, right?
That part is fine. It's the constructively, eventually we're going to get somewhere. That's the difference. Here's a theory that was plugged up. Thermodynamics.
Okay.
Particularly if you heat up a piece of metal, what is the spectrum of light, more generally than like infrared, ultraviolet, the whole electromagnetic spectrum.
The colors that it glows, is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Of which only a narrow band is visible. Yeah, the whole spectrum of colors. That theory was not working out around 1900. If you naively worked through the theory, then it would be like there would be infinitely much light coming off of it, and it wasn't making sense.
And so different metal is going to shine a different color at a different temperature, and like whatever,
Yeah, well, there's one simplification that there's an ideal black body, and different metals approach that to different degrees, and most metals are pretty close to it. But okay, so there's I think I know what you're talking about. Yeah, that's a different thing.
I'm thinking about like bluing pipes on a motorcycle, like the temperature that they get. Like if they get super hot, then they turn like an orange or something. If they get maybe they turn blue or something when they're super hot, and then they're like almost hot. Oh,
this is exactly what I'm talking about. Yes. Okay. Yeah, this is exactly it. That is
the heating of the metal, and it turns the color of the metal.
Right. It's one spectrum. It's one sort of round shape that moves through the visible spectrum. So when the visible part, when it's cold, you just see it maybe a little bit reddish.
Yeah.
relatively
Well,
cold.
and yeah, comparatively.
And then when it's really hot, then you're just seeing the tail end of this curve going through the visible spectrum.
It's like blue purple almost, and it gets to like white, kind of, just like
right,
and then it cracks, and then you got a dead pipe, and you're like, oh, yeah. Anyway, go ahead.
So that theory, if you naively work it out, you don't get this shape with finitely much light.
Mm-hmm.
You get this shape just goes up infinitely. You should get infinite amount of light out of this if you just use classical thermodynamics.
Right.
So that's a problem. That's clearly not true.
Right.
And then, a lot of different ideas about how to fix it,
Mm-hmm.
or just throw it out altogether, and maybe there's some completely new theory. And all of these things were considered at the same time. And that was a theory that was patched. Max Planck said, well, suppose that energy can't take any value. Suppose that it can only take integer values. So you can have, 3 units of energy, 4 units of energy, but not 3.5 units of energy. Let's just throw that in there. This
Interesting.
Total patch.
Yeah, that wouldn't even make sense. Why it would only land on integers? The integers are imaginary. We invented them.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So it felt very artificial.
Right.
There was, and it feels like a patch, and it was a patch. There wasn't any good argument for it. Turns out it was exactly right.
Wow.
It saved the theory, and then other evidence came in. This was the first evidence for quantum mechanics, and why it's called quantum is because the energy is quantized into integers, and it's one of many things that point into it. But this is, I just want to say there are cases in which plugging a hole in a dam and not understanding why you're putting that plug in there is the right answer.
That's great.
It sometimes happens.
Maybe because we're psychic and we have that ability, I don't know, but that's fantastic. And I mean, I can't imagine why it would be integers,
Yeah.
But I mean,
there's a reason.
That's I'm sure. Yeah. Well, that's great.
It's like a violin string pinned at both ends, and it can go like this. That's 1. It can go like this.
Okay.
It can go like this. That's 3. But it can't have part of it because
it's the end is there. Right. I see. Right. So an integer just is a fixed amount of space. Like it could be, they just plug it in with a 1 or a 2 or whatever.
Yeah, it's the same reason that the overtones of a string instrument are integer multiples of each other. Is the same.
Right.
But
wow,
at the time,
does that make you think that this is a simulation reality?
No. Well,
okay, good.
Depends on what you want to call it.
Yeah, I know. It's just like it seems. The more you the more you break it down, it seems like it's a computer.
Actually,
I don't know. Have you ever heard of Thomas Campbell? He wrote a book called My Big Toe, My Big Theory of Everything. Thomas Campbell. He used to work at the Monroe Institute, where he would do binaural beats in his ears, and he would like astral project, and like very interesting stuff. And he believes this is like a created computer. The more that he goes in and out of the astral projection, the more he thinks that this is like some kind of like Sims, the video game, like we're an avatar of something else, Anyway, I'll send you the book. I got it on PDF.
Okay.
All right. Anyway, I guess, don't speak on that. But so the idea of the plugging the hole does make sense in some cases. But when you're plugging a hole and you're a scientist, you're not bringing from way over there. You're like still in this area of truth, usually, right?
Well, the things that have been, you have to stick to the things that have been established, and and you've got to remember what things really, really have been established and what things haven't. Like, you've got some experimental evidence which is used to, let's say, prove a theory. and I'm always going to have the word prove in quotes, but
Mm-hmm.
the way that I say it, the word always comes out in quotes. You have some experimental evidence supporting a theory, and everybody believes that theory. And then we find some other problems with the theory. In addition to patching the theory, when we're thinking of what possible explanations there could be, they don't have to save the theory. They do have to save the experiments that supported it.
Right. It could be another reason for those experiments being true.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And there are, I'm sure if I thought about it, I could come up with examples for that. You know, a theory supports an experiment supports a certain theory, but it wasn't the only theory it could have supported. And so when you have to roll back, it's like, okay, we're stuck here because these things are not fitting together. We have to roll back
to where it did fit. Right.
You roll
in
back
some experiment, right?
But then the experiments, any like repeatable experiment that you can keep doing and keep getting the same result, that's where truth comes. That's
exactly right. You've weeded out the inconsistencies when you can, repeat it. Right.
Yeah. And then, you can think of maybe I'm misinterpreting this theory. This experiment, because every interpretation of an experiment is itself a theory.
Right. And that's you can look at science of like how they create drugs and stuff, and like the way they interpret all these experiments gets them approved, and then aspartame becomes part of our, diet because somebody approved it, even though it's like poisonous to humans. And anyway, go ahead. Because they set up scientific, like whoever pays for the science experiments gets the results they want, basically, in like.
That's what's the word for it? Conflict of interest. Yeah.
There's a lot of that. In your field, I guess there's a reduction of that because you're actually looking at a natural event where anything could happen, and you're just, firing it up and seeing what happens. Like you're not doing it you're not firing it up in a certain way to get a certain result. You know what I mean? So you guys, I think, are a little closer to truth discovery than
setting
people
it up
that work at pharma. Go ahead.
Right. Setting it up so that you get a certain result is what we would want.
Well, I'm just saying, like, if you want to prove that this food additive or drug or whatever is safe, then you're gonna
that's interest.
Only have the trial go this long because like after that, then the problems start. So like they frame the way that they frame scientific experiment in some fields like pharma and whatever.
Right. We have conflict of interest is a thing that's actually that's studied. And when we're doing, if one scientist is reviewing another scientist's paper, they have to go through the conflict of interest.
Right. Who are they? Who do they work for? Why? Yeah.
You list all the names of your colleagues, list all your family, and they check the lists, make sure that there's not overlap, so that you're not just approving your cousin's paper.
Man, like I wish that people would do that for the everybody that's telling them what to do and think. I wish everybody would actually look and see. Like Bill Gates talks about this and that, and people are like, "Oh, he's great. He means well. He loves society." And then you look at who he is, where he comes from, his family and shit, and then it's like, "Oh my God, he's a created monster. He's built to do what he's doing." And like it's anyway, like you look at people's family lines and their how they became popular, and you yourself talked about IBM and how they're a behemoth. Like IBM chose Bill Gates because the guy that owns IBM was on the board of United Way with Bill Gates's mother, and Bill Gates's mom was like, "Hey, you want a computer thing?" And Bill Gates just stole DOS. Dirty operating system was already freeware. It was already there. He just stole it and put a name on it. It's sick. I mean, like they're really, he's not a computer. People are like, he's a computer programmer. Why would you trust him? He's not even that. He's like, but we don't need to talk about him specifically. Yeah, but you know, like people don't look into who they are and why, and then they just, you know, they readily, they just take up this piece of this lie like it's a snack, like it's a treat. Oh yeah, Bill Gates loves us. Oh, you know, like that's the truth. Yeah, and they don't discern, like they're eating this poison into their consciousness. Like, okay, anyway.
Yeah. I'm surprised by the cult following that some rich people get.
Yeah. Well, it's engineered. Obviously, they have PR people, and like, you know, like Rockefeller was told by his PR people to give people dimes because everybody wants money from you. So just give them a dime and then they'll go away, you know? And then he was like, everybody loves him because he gives dimes to people. And like, he became this like Santa Claus type guy instead of like the evil guy that owns Standard Oil. It's, you know, monopoly and all that shit. Like they changed his PR because they, you know, and they were like, oh, you know, there are people that are psychological. They study the psychology of the optics of public relations and propaganda and that type of thing. And, you know, Rockefeller started the Rockefeller Foundation, you know, so he doesn't have to pay taxes and so that he can do all that, still have all this money and power. And so, and Bill Gates did the same thing, you know, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Like it's just, and he pays money to the foundation and it's like, he's paying it to himself. You know, it's like this whole convoluted lawyer like system of like, anyway. So yeah, that whole thing, like they have people, it's a whole, like what we see and think of these people is created and given to us. And no wonder they have a following like these, because people don't decipher truth, you know, they just accept what they want to believe. You know, I want to believe people love me and want to care for me. I want to believe there is no satanic ritual abuse or like child trafficking or all this stuff. Like nobody wants to believe it, so that helps it stay occulted, you know, and that's part of the trick, you know. But
there's one of the things actually I wanted to get to, and maybe this is a good segue, is that there is the psychological part of this, psychological part of being open to multiple things.
Right.
I'm trying to remember the word. Cognitive dissonance.
Yeah.
When there's
you believe two things at the same time that are opposite. Right. And yet, that's double think in 1984. That's double think.
Okay, but wait, no. Let me clarify what I'm thinking, because I'm about to say this is what scientists do.
Okay. All right.
What I mean is the problem of having an uncertainty band. You know, holding the possibility that the old theory is true with some fix-ups.
Right.
Some new theory is true. Some other new theory is true. Some other new theory is true. Keeping all of these
juggling them.
Yeah. Keeping all of them in mind at once as possibilities is, I have to say, a hard thing to do. Yeah. It's going against what a human brain likes to do, which is to have certainty. Right.
Right. Pattern recognition, certainty. Yeah.
And the way that we do this, and the way that we stay constructive, is to never be satisfied, never be comfortable with any view.
Is that why physicists always say probabilities? There's never really black and white. There's always like a probability it will be black. Like,
yeah, that's right. That's right.
Okay,
I mean,
that's interesting.
There's probabilities in mechanics, and there's probabilities in experiments.
Right.
And then there's probability, and then even beyond all of that, there's the probability that this theory is true, or that theory is true, or that other theory is true. Those are actually different probabilities.
Right. And it gives the mathematicians, you guys that love to do all the math, it gives you something to do, and you're all like, yay, some more calculations.
Actually, where this happened for me, this getting over this, sometime I guess when I was a teenager, because I was, as a teenager, thinking about aliens.
Sweet.
Are aliens real or are aliens not real? And I didn't mean just like have aliens contacted us, but like, are aliens real at all? Which it's not, that's not at all ridiculous that there would be other planets elsewhere that would have life or sentient life. But also
the probability is high with all the amount of stars and all the, you know what I mean?
Yeah, like the Fermi, the Drake equation. But every term in that equation, like the number of planets, the number of planets that could have life, the number of blah 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 blah. Every one of them has giant uncertainties.
Well,
so
it's true.
That you get
all that we know is what we see from the light that comes down. You know what I mean? Like, it's really tough to get all that information from just light.
Yeah. Actually, since when I was a teenager, one thing has been cleared up. When I was a teenager, it was not known that there were planets outside our solar system, although everyone would think that. The first exoplanets. Are you
kidding? Really?
Yeah, were discovered in the 90s.
Wow. Oh, of our solar system, exoplanets.
Outside. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I mean, we see, like, we know that Venus is out there, obviously.
Oh yeah. But,
Right. But they thought that everything was just stars beyond?
No.
Okay. Of our system. Right.
No, the thing that was discovered in the 90s was evidence that there are planets around other stars. Everyone, in terms of the terms in the Drake equation of where the final answer is how probable extraterrestrial life is, most of these have giant uncertainties. And that first term, are there even planets outside our solar system?
Yeah.
That was pretty well expected, but it wasn't until the 90s that there was evidence for it. Now it's
now there are planetary structures beyond Pluto that are recognized as part of our system.
There's that.
They're not considered planets, but they're like,
Yeah, well, those are super cold things. If we're talking about aliens, then we're looking for planets around other stars.
Right.
And that's
like what Star Trek talks about, and like, that whole idea.
Right. And that's that's relatively recent that there's been any evidence for that. So anyway, no. So I was a teenager. Thinking about aliens, and on the one hand, I could convince myself, yes, the universe is full of aliens, full of extraterrestrial life. And on the other hand, I can convince myself, no.
Right.
It could very well be that the situation on Earth is, that the hurdles
is an accident, like a cosmic accident or whatever.
Yeah, the hurdles that life on Earth went,
to create Earth itself, like, it's very unique to this planet individually.
Yeah, it could be a ridiculously improbable thing.
Right.
And suppose that it is ridiculously improbable, and so therefore, so improbable that it only happened once in the universe, which is extreme. If that happened, it would look just like this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then the geocentric people are saying, like, it would look just like this, and they look, the sun goes around.
Yeah, geocentric until there was enough evidence, or
right.
Flat Earth.
So like, it just
Flat Earth would look just like this until you go 1,000 miles.
Right.
It wouldn't look just like this
until you look up at the stars and whatever.
And if we get like a message from a radio message from another star, then a universe with no aliens wouldn't look like this.
Exactly. All of a sudden,
that would be evidence.
Now that piece of truth has to be figured in with the theory. And then it would negate all the other ones. Right.
So the problem I had as a teenager is, on the one, on some days I could convince myself, there's lots of aliens. On other days I could convince myself, no, we're really pretty unique.
Yeah.
And I realized one day that I didn't have to have an opinion on this. I realized one day that I could have in my head the fact that these are both possibilities. And that was a hurdle. That wasn't like the first thing I thought of. That was something I had to get to. That's like, oh, wait a minute. It could be, or it could not be.
Yeah.
That was an unnatural thought.
So you had to reserve judgment, I guess.
Yeah. And there's some like psychological pain associated with that.
Right.
It kind of hurts to have, like, especially if it's something you care about, like aliens. Like,
yeah, sure.
If it's something you care about, you want to know the answer.
Right. I want to believe, like the X-Files poster, right?
Yeah. You know, I mean, you're talking Star Trek. That's what I was watching exactly.
Oh, I know. I remember you, dude. I had to walk through the room, and like it was always you and Bill. Anyway, go ahead.
And so being a scientist is like this. There's some knowledge. You're not just, oh, I don't care. It could be anything. No, we care about what the answer is, and yet have to accept that we don't know. That hurts. You know, that's a difficult thing.
Yeah. And that drives the discoveries, but I mean, that is what keeps you going, really. I mean,
it wouldn't work if we didn't have those two things. It wouldn't work if we both, it wouldn't work unless we have both caring about the answer and also accepting that we don't know the answer.
Right.
Remove either one of those things and we're out of the game.
Right. If you think you know the answer, then like it's all folly, right? Because it could be, I mean, I don't know.
Then you're
depending on the situation, like, or depending on
then
the
you're not being
evidence.
constructive anymore.
Right. And that's kind of where the flat earth people are over there. They're not being constructive. It's a cul-de-sac. They go and they, you know, and they spend their time online and, you know, arguing with people. And then they, you know, there's this dude, this Flat Earth Dave or whatever. He's got this app that like gives you a new video to watch every day, and it's like cult programming. You know, like they need to keep giving you the fake so that you don't actually see the truth. You know, it keeps people in the spinning their wheels in the cul-de-sac. And and he charges money. You know, it's like
for random science theory X, I don't need to watch a video. You know, for one that I feel is established. I don't need
satiating the care, though. They have this care and they want to find the truth, you know, and then it's like, oh, well, here, have this thing that plugs the hole, you know, and they just like gobble it up. Yeah. And then they go around saying, I know the truth, you know.
Yeah.
So, anyway, I don't mean to talk bad about people. Like maybe the guy's got to pay for his life, you know, whatever. And he created this thing. He's out there promoting it. Maybe he doesn't believe what he's saying. Like maybe he's just trying to sell an app. Like, you know. But it's sad because they readily, because of their care, but they throw out the other part, you know, and then it just then they live in the cognitive dissonance, though. But it's a different kind of cognitive dissonance where, like, the moon has its own light, but then the sun is doing this thing and it's having all the. But why does it? Oh well, it is true because I know it's true, you know. Like they're told that the sun doesn't actually go down below the horizon, that it just goes farther away and it just gets smaller and disappears, when that's obviously not true. That flat earth people think that.
Yeah, that's not what the sun looks like when on the
sky. Exactly. So when people look at the sun going behind the horizon, in their mind, they see that truth, and then they think, oh no, it's just going away. And so that's a cognitive dissonance too, where they believe one thing, but they have to see this truth. It's really weird. Like it's insidious how this it goes deep into their heads, and it really affects how they see the world.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry. I love all you flat earthers that are listening, man. I'm trying to. I want people to help right their rudders. I want them to be on the right path, and and I'm not telling you what to think. I just want you to be able to, uptake the truth. Like, it's important, and the care is great. And we love that you care so much. And
if you didn't, and if you didn't care what they thought, then you wouldn't be having this video.
Right. Yeah, I care about like everybody. Like I said earlier, we're all family, and I want people to, like, if I was stuck in that modality of thinking, I would want to be released from that cul-de-sac. If I didn't know I was spinning my wheels, I would be thankful once I got free. And I'm not telling people they should be thankful and thank me or whatever, but I'm saying, like, if I was them, I would want somebody like me to nudge them peacefully. Like, I used to, like, before they kicked me off Facebook, I was arguing with people. They would come into, I was in a group. What on earth is happening? It's this one of my peers, Mark Passio, has his podcast, and that's the name of the podcast. And the logo that he has is around Earth. What on earth is happening? And it's got a picture of the Earth in space. And the people, they like descended. There was like trolls like crazy, and they hit in waves. It was like, it was organized, and all of these people showed up, and we had to like make barriers for people getting accepted. And like, before, it was just a free-for-all. Anybody can come in and talk and whatever. But we spent days fighting them off. Like, it was like a war. It was crazy. And I have sharpened my sword on this for this fight. I know, like, all the angles they have, and I'm not like saying I'm good at fighting, or I'm not like saying like, I've thought about it enough. Like, I've thought about it. I know all their angles, and I know that it's still not flat. Like, it's still, like, no matter what you think, like, it's, anyway.
Probably the right place to be addressing it is not actually to be addressing it like a scientific theory on this evidence, that evidence, because clearly that's not what's needed, because that hasn't worked, and that really would work if it was what was needed.
Right. We do logical scientific explanations all day long on Facebook. It doesn't sink in, or Facebook, whatever, all the forums, everywhere, online when they talk. The logical conversation is like a waste of time, and in the scheme of things, really what the trolls do is they're like stealing time from you so that you have to be in this fight, and like, in a way, you're spinning your wheels in your own life. Like, now you're fighting this guy, you're so emotional about this argument, and like, I'm glad to be off of Facebook. It's insidious too, but like, so it's like this huge sap of energy from people that are trying to understand the truth of human slavery and understanding the psychology of it. And like, that's really what Passio was trying to do with his his thing. And all of a sudden, we got to fight off all these flat earthers, and it's organized. I think that it's a psyop, and it was created, and the way that it attacks society's consciousness, it's sapping our energy, and it's making us fight each other. And it's perfect for the goals of the globalists, the Satanists. It puts us to where we have to fight our neighbors, and it's really, and science. You guys, you all get along. You all say, yeah, I'm trying to find the truth too. It's interesting how you don't have this kind of ego identification on the one or the other. Like, maybe some of you do, like the super symmetry guy that we were talking about before. Like, he's clinging on to that. He really wants to.
Well, there's still an avenue that might still be true.
Right. That's true.
You know, and people become associated with some theories. And actually, before we start, I said there's another nice example: the discovery of quarks.
Right.
That's a fairly recent one. That's 1970s, 1980s. It was gradual.
Mm-hmm.
But the arguments then, nobody argued with the experiments, because when an experiment, a reproducible experiment, shows that collision of two particles gives you jets in this particular way, then that's what it does. You can repeat the experiment, but that's a pin in our knowledge. That doesn't go anywhere.
Right.
But then what wobbled around that was that we get these particular patterns because protons and neutrons are made of smaller particles called quarks. That's one hand. And on the other hand, people are saying, no, just the mathematics works out that way as though they were made of quarks.
It's a trick of the math that makes it look like that.
Right.
Okay.
And the reason for that is that part of the theory is that it is impossible to pull a quark out of a proton or a neutron. And that's weird. Particles don't usually work that way. What happens if you do try to take a quark out of a proton or a neutron is, as you pull, the energy, the binding energy that's holding it in, as you pull, you need to put in more and more energy to make that happen, because you're stretching a rubber band.
Right.
You want to eventually break the rubber band and pull this quark out.
Mm-hmm.
What happens when you've put in enough energy is that energy is enough to create a new quark-antiquark pair between them.
Okay, so that's the smallest particle possible is the quark.
Yeah. So the thing then at the end of that, after you take these three quarks, try to pull one out, then you created a new quark-antiquark pair, and now you've got three quarks and two quarks.
Right.
You never got one quark.
And aren't they bound also with what is it, where like if one gets affected, the other one does at the same time? Like
they're intrinsically
quantum entanglement, is that?
Yeah, I think that quarks are always entangled, because you can never get one isolate. In order to make quantum, you have an entangled quantum system. In order to detangle it, you need to isolate. You need to isolate its parts.
Well, just cut it like a Gordian knot. Just slice through it with some math.
That's the thing. You with a lot of energy and with a big collision.
Yeah.
Pull a quark out of it, and then there's so much energy there that it creates a new quark-antiquark pair.
Right.
And you've got a 3 and a 2 instead of just a 3.
Right.
So you've never got a 1. And so there was a group of people who were saying like, no, that's not particles. That's
right.
Not, those are. You get this interesting math that gives you that the set of
math is repeatable too. Like it always comes out
absolutely.
That way. Right,
yeah.
Right.
You got some 3-ish particles and you got some 2-ish particles. It doesn't mean that there's 3 things in it or 2 things in it.
Right, because you're applying these integers to a spectrum. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So and that was one where there was there were arguments, and depending on how philosophically you want to push it, it's unanswerable. If you want to say philosophically.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess because you can't find that in an experiment, really.
Right. But so what happened there is that the generation of physicists who didn't believe in quarks basically died off.
Wow.
That kind of happened.
Wow.
So considering that, if we encounter something new that could only be explained if there are no quarks, and quarks are really just a trick of math,
right,
we would have to consider that. That would have to come back.
Right.
Just because all the adherents of a theory have died off, have all retired. Many of them actually.
But the records are there. They made their stamp on science, and it's there to be found again. Right.
Yeah.
It's in the files.
It's in the realm of possibilities. We have to keep considering it.
Right. So like the supersymmetry, that guy is still clinging on to the idea that it's within the realm of possibility.
Yeah, especially since, at least with the quarks, it was more either or, right? With the supersymmetry, there's it's actually a class of theories.
Right.
And at its root, if you say that at the very high energy scale, many, many orders of magnitude beyond what we can reach with colliders, the universe is supersymmetric at that scale, and then it's broken symmetry at lower energy scales. That's not only possible, but plausible. I've seen the arguments for it, and
so it could be halfway the right truth or whatever.
The real question is whether there's electroweak scale, there's reachable, at energy scales reachable by the LHC at CERN, whether or not there's unbroken supersymmetry at that scale.
Aren't you guys going to max out the next time it's fired up? Like, it's fired up now, right? But I mean, it's going to max out its energy, right?
It's pretty close to the design energy. And so much so that we're in run 3. First run was when I was involved in 2010, 2011. But now we're on run 3. And we're pretty close to the design energy of 14 TeV.
Right.
So run 4 is not going to be an increase in energy, it's going to be an increase in luminosity. So instead of colliding them at higher energies, collide more of them.
Right. Well, that's great. And they're building more colliders with different levels of capacity of energy, right?
Yeah, the next collider is still an open question. In fact, it's been for most of my academic career.
Right.
What collider is after the LHC has been something that still hasn't been settled.
Doesn't China have one going where that they're?
Yeah, they have some low energy accelerators.
Okay.
You might have heard that. The linear collider, the Higgs factory, linear collider to make lots of Higgses. That idea, which was being thrown around in the year 2000, that's when the community supposedly decided on it. 22 years
Takes
ago.
a while. Yeah.
A long time. So that was picked up by Japan, and Japan, the Japanese government said, yeah, we'll build this. But now they say, okay, we're going to pause on that. Maybe not. So maybe that's not going to happen.
Right. Do you think it's like because of politics and how
Oh well,
I mean, it's like
yeah.
Well, that too, right? Yeah.
Yes, it's politics.
Yeah, right. I mean, like, look at CERN and how they kicked out Russia because they're mad about whatever. And it's, and it was created by NATO, kind of, it's like a NATO thing.
It's a thing like NATO.
Yeah. It was created by the same people, I guess. They were,
Yeah, probably is.
And it's like when I read the bio on it, they're like, oh, we're trying to have like peace in Europe again, and like, bringing people together in this common unity of like to bind them in a peaceful thing where,
It was founded in 1946.
Right.
So.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
Right. Yeah, that's all they were thinking about at the time. And
right. Yeah. Actually, no, it's more a thing like the United Nations than a thing like NATO.
Exactly. But United Nations is like Rockefeller. It's like built on Rockefeller land, and it's like, the money created by Rockefeller, and it's like, it's pushing the same ideologies as like same globalism. Like United Nations is globalist control.
Okay. I mean, it's the same kind of organization that's in
yeah, where everybody has like a seat at the table kind of shit. Like,
right. Right. Except
Excuse
Russia
my
right now.
language. Right. Yeah, because we're mad at you guys. But really, like, yeah. So anyway, it's kind of sad how like they're using this politically to harm others or to like not. It's like a kid on the playground, like taking his ball and going home. Like, man, I don't like you anymore. Like, we can't play
Well, yeah,
basketball anymore. Like,
the Russian scientists, who now can't participate because the Russian government started a ridiculous war.
well, yeah, all war is ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then there's other things like
Right. That's why I had to end up. I was in my
But the Russian scientists aren't allowed to participate, and now you guys lose that talent that you had helping. It's detrimental to everybody. Just for political. Anyway, yeah, it's kind of sad. So, basically, scientists, you guys all, I mean, you might not all get along on your theories, but you still accept and you still like respect each other, and you listen, and you can all work together to find this common truth that we're all living in. There's no denial of your truth is wrong and my truth is this. um, Whereas in common society, that is a factor. It's like it's dividing us. um, how is it that you like, is it just a are you just told to be tolerant of others while you're like in science school, like learn to be a doctor? Like, I mean, how does that work? Like, I don't understand.
kind of in the sense that it's a culture,
Right.
and it's a culture that developed gradually over centuries.
Hmm.
People who get together and talk about things in this way will have heated arguments, will yell at each other. Sometimes, it can get very heated,
Right.
but it always eventually gets around to the fact that we all care about what the truth is, and we're all willing to suspend belief until we see the thing.
Right.
See the evidence,
The
see
proof.
those two pieces is just a cultural ideal. Every culture has its ideals, and the scientific culture is a group of humans who like these things. And also the fact that it's opt-in, it's like born into the circle of scientists.
Right.
Some people choose, and when they choose it, they kind of have to adopt the
methods of it,
yeah,
like the
methods.
process. Yeah.
Right. Because if you're just going to be like, okay, I'm going to be a scientist and I'm going to not pay attention to experiments or something like that, or certain
Yeah.
experiments or something
I'm
like
going to
that.
be a scientist, but the number 7 doesn't exist.
Yeah, like
It goes 6, 8.
No 7.
Everybody else is wrong.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Like if you do that, then you said, I'm going to take the ball. I'm not going to play with you. Yeah, all the other scientists are not going to play with you.
Right.
It's like,
That makes sense. Right. So you have to prove scientists have to prove that they have to. It's like not everybody's crazy will fly. You have to actually like have integrity,
right.
for to be accepted. And that's the way it should be. It's like a merit-based society there. That's the way it should be. Yeah.
Right.
That's good. So yeah, everybody in my world, they not everybody, but there's a lot of people in the truth-seeking podcast. It doesn't have a name, whatever. The people that do what I'm trying to do, a lot of them they accept this is what I'm believing, and then I have this truth, and then they move on from there, And then if you don't believe it, then we have to fight it out. It's like truth can be elusive. Not everybody has it. I certainly probably don't have like I'm lacking in a lot of areas of truth discovery. Yeah, everybody is, right, exactly. Yeah. And it's like, what was it? Who was it? They went to the Oracle of Delphi and they said that is Aristotle the smartest man? And they were like, yes. And then he went around and he tried to figure out if he really was the smartest guy. And everybody, Socrates, yes, thank you. And like he figured out that everybody thought they knew, and he's the only one that understood that he doesn't know, and that's why. That's really, thank you for fixing that. I'm glad you. Yeah. Later, I'd be listening to the recording, and while I'm editing, I'd be like, I said it wrong. Thank you. But yeah, it really takes an understanding of like, I don't know, and get my ego out of the way, and like, I might, hey, maybe the earth is flat, maybe. I'm not trying to bash people and like, beat them into submission. Like, I think it's round because I have experienced these certain truths and, my own perception, whatever, but still like,
you have observations.
Right. Yes. And like, yeah. And like, I weed out the inconsistencies, and I use a method of like the trivium method, where I try to gather all of the knowledge pieces and, sift through it and, get the correct logic, but, maybe I did it wrong. Maybe it's, I'm not the smartest guy, obviously, and that's, I'm having you on because you're much smarter than me, in my opinion, in many realms. And I'm glad that you can share what you've learned and your perspective. It's one of the reasons I have this show, is to like talk to people with other heads that are thinking different things. And, I'm thankful for learning every time, I don't know, I guess it takes that kind of attitude to get there.
Yeah, actually that's a good word, attitude. Because that's, there's the caring about the topic, there's the being loose about being willing, then there's evidence, and you can have this whole lists of evidence, things you can see, observe, and to test the theories and such. But then there's that other part, which is the attitude. That's actually a good word for it. What happens in a scientific culture is everybody has a certain attitude. That is what makes it go forward. Is if we lost that attitude, if the intention of gathering a bunch of evidence was to further a point of view rather than find out,
yeah,
then it would stop. Progress would stop.
Right. And in a sense, in our modern times, progress has stopped in a lot of ways. People, they just accept what the government says. They just accept what the man in the white coat says, and then those people are frequently wrong and changing their opinions. Look at like Fauci, for example. He's like, don't wear a mask, wear 2 masks. Like they don't know, and everybody trusts them and believes them. Like, I'm certain that they know the truth. So I'm gonna, and it's the same shit as like in the old days, like the priest knows the truth, obviously.
Oh, wait a minute! What you said about should you? Is it important to wash your hands? Should you wear a mask? Should you, remember?
Well, no, I didn't say the hands. I'm just saying one example.
I'm adding that because that was one that was turned down, because that was early on.
That's true. It started with that, and then they threw that one in the waste bin.
It's because
go ahead and touch them.
No, I mean, this is science. They didn't know at first, and bouncing around, holding different points of view. The thing that's different about this is that there's a policy. It's not just
and the
finding.
government has a certain attitude
Also,
where they're like, believe what we say or else, that is an attitude.
That is an attitude. Yeah. It's music now.
Yeah, that's fine. It's delightful. We can still hear your voice, man.
Okay,
It's great. Okay. Yeah, I don't want to get arguing about whatever the current time, but really it doesn't, like the way that people, they use the mantra of in that they say like trust the science, and then they say the science is settled, and then people like that dude that I mentioned earlier, he's like, I am the science, and when they're questioning me, they're questioning science. Like, whoa, that's some religious dogma. You're trying to be a new priest, you know what I mean? And that's like, and people just accept it, like, and it's the same function mentally as it was when in the days of Roman Catholicism, feudalism, that same kind of acceptance of slavery and authority, and like so religion doesn't work anymore, government doesn't really work anymore, so now they're just sliding in this science and technocracy.
There's a word, scientism. Scientism, right? As opposed to science.
Yes, and that's dogmatic belief, right?
Yeah. Now I don't know what would happen if, so like in the field that I'm in, whether I don't think we're going to get to dark matter, whether dark matter exists, or whether quarks exist, or supersymmetry, or whether the Earth is round or flat.
Right.
These things,
the acceptance of any truth, of knowledge, or whatever.
Okay, but these things, they don't matter in a certain way. They don't imply what people need to do, like wearing masks or washing hands or whatever. That is a so like you can have a real scientific struggle figuring something out where not everything is known, and of course you're going to be shifting around as your views change. But then if attached to that is also an implication that something has to happen,
right,
complicates things.
Right.
That really, and I don't know what it would be like to be in a kind of science where the science has policy implications.
Right. You're lucky you're in a science where you're in pure discovery. It's like it's wide open what you could discover, and there's you can't think this, you're in a good field. Like if you were somewhere else, it's like there's policy, some like the way that information is taught in schools of the different realms, like medical academies nowadays, they don't look at an entire swaths of medical knowledge. They just don't accept it. They're just like, the only thing that we do is surgery and medicine, poison or whatever. And it's like, and the rest of medicine is thrown in the waste bin for thousands of years because this is what we accept, because this is how we make money on it. This is like, and the culture is created to put boundaries on, and that's why, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like you're more in a free open, because anything could be discovered with the particle accelerators.
Right.
And,
Right. But if my passion were in like bodies and how bodies work, right? And the things, the uncertainty band excludes stuff way out there, and it's and it's about trying to narrow in on what this is.
Yes.
If it would be it would make things, as hard as this is to figure out the truth, it would make things even harder if the thing that you feel like you've established about the body has some like medical implications. Actually, pick a medical theory which is false. Like what? Let's pick a ridiculous one.
9 out of 10 doctors say Camel cigarettes are good for you. That's
okay, yeah, that cigarettes are good for you, right?
Yeah, there were some doctors that used to say in the commercials.
Yeah, I know.
Cools are better because it's refreshing and whatever. Yeah, I mean but that was connected to money, and it had a hook on it that made it be like, this is what we want people to say.
Yeah,
and then
that's one example that is definitely showing that influence of the, what do you call it, vested interest, the conflict of interest. Because if the study of whether cigarettes are good for you or bad for you is done by, is financed by Camel cigarettes, then well, what do you think? But what about, no, let's I just want to do like what about what is some medical theory that is not promoted by anyone with power, but is wrong? Because
acupuncture is good, and it does have effect on people. Psychoanalysis does a lot of good. Talking therapies is like not accepted. Everybody's psychiatry is like, we must drug people. We must, that's there's a lot of, those are two pretty good ones that I can think off the top of my head.
What about homeopathy?
Yeah, that's totally thrown away. Like
okay.
Homeopathy and like the idea that you can use herbs and stuff. You can't patent an herb because it's in nature. So that's why they never they can't use cannabis as they can't patent cannabis, right? Because it's naturally occurring, and so they have to isolate the THC into a pill and call it Marinol, and like now they can sell that and patent that because it's like a process of isolation or whatever. So like they need to apply money to it. So like in the old days, like almost all the medicines had cannabis in it, and a lot of them had opium too, and like a lot of that. But it was used as medicine. But now in modern times, they can't patent it. And same thing that's why they're creating GMO foods, GMO animals, plants, because then they can own the patent, right? Yeah. So they have to take nature and alter it in order to say, now this is mine and I created it. Right. So like that is a whole psychological trap, which makes us destroy nature. It's probably built by Satanism.
Yeah. Well, how about, okay, so let's go let me take a particular kind of homeopathy where the thing is that, okay, if you have a little bit, so a lot of some poison is bad. So a little bit of the poison is good. And then how does that work? Right. Yeah. So then to really push the point, they will dilute whatever this is, the thing you're allergic to.
Strychnine.
Let's say. And they'll dilute it and dilute it and dilute it to the point where it is not probable that there is one molecule of it in the thing, because they really do dilute it that much. So then you drink water, it's pure water. And, so considering all of that, considering the observations, looking at that as a scientist, okay, clearly that's not going to have an effect. You're drinking water.
Right.
Water that used to be touching the thing you're allergic to.
The molecule or whatever. Yeah.
Right. But there are no such, but there are no molecules of it in the thing that you're drinking. You're drinking water. Right.
So it's like a placebo effect.
Right. Right. And placebo effect is a strong, well-known effect.
Yes. Yeah.
So, okay, so there's that. That is that's one of these pure science kind of things where that there's some established, there's some region of the theory space that is established, and the truth is somewhere inside this uncertainty band, and that's way the heck out there. So you'd like, as a scientist, you want to be able to say, come on, that's ridiculous. What is different about that than like the field of science I'm in is that there's a policy thing connected to that. It means that someone who's getting rich selling homeopathy should be exposed.
Right. Yeah, there's a moral issue.
Quarks.
Right. Yeah, you're not making money by saying there's quarks. Right.
But some people are getting rich off of this, giving people water and using the placebo effect. And that is, then it becomes not pure science. And that doesn't make it less important.
It takes a belief, and the people that believe the snake oil are like, I believe it, and they're invested. Yeah. And then when they accept the lie and they're drinking the water that they paid for or whatnot, they don't want to believe that they were duped, So then that attaches an ego basis to it. So if you made a mistake, and nobody wants to say they were wrong, and that kind of that skews things. Once people accept the lie and then they do the wrong thing, they don't want to go back and say, oh, whoops, that was a lie.
Yeah.
So, because now they're invested.
Yeah, all of that is effective. All of that is happening for like the flat earth or the quarks or whatever.
Right.
But then with this, there's also an actionable thing. What if the government got in and said, put fines on people who are making a lot of money for homeopathy, or the opposite, or if the government started promoting homeopathy? Either one of those. That would be, that has, it's impure.
That puts a hook on it, and then it makes it like, then it steers it in the direction of that intent, right? Is that what you're...
Then it becomes even, for as much important as science is just in itself, then it becomes even more of a thing, more important, because no, I don't think people should be making money off of homeopathy. And if someone was trying to push homeopathy, my goodness, that would be terrible. Then it becomes even more of an issue.
Right.
And it's hard, to be sitting at one end of a spectrum where I get to, be all happy with the purity of the science because nobody cares except us. But, I have to be sympathetic of people who want to be good scientists in a field that has consequences.
Right. People die, man.
Yeah.
People, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Like, what if someone's taking homeopathy instead of treating whatever, and then they're just dying?
Right.
Oh.
Or what if they're taking chemotherapy and the only benefit is 5% chance that it actually works? But then the negative effects are so huge and immense, and the treatment can kill you.
Yeah.
But they're taught that that's the only way to do it. That's the only way, because this is how it works. This is the system.
Right.
It's really...
Yeah, it would just be wrong to not give people the chance.
Yeah, the ability to look and see if homeopathy does work or what. I don't know, but I mean, there's probably many other ways of curing cancer than using radiation and chemotherapy. It's poison, and those things were developed from war. They were creating mustard gas, and they discovered that chemotherapy. And then they were applying it to humans.
Discoveries can work that way.
I know.
The way that things go swirly, you can get really good things out of very bad.
Or it's just continuation of bad things. And so that's an implication of
Oh, I've probably got some examples of that. I mean, that bad things can make a discovery, and that discovery can be used for good. I mean, nuclear physics.
Yeah, right. Right. Yeah. And I mean, there was a lot of torture of in the World War II, there was like they were torturing the people in the concentration camps, and they were
Yes.
gathering knowledge, like how much you can torture a human, and like now they know the limits. Like I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I mean their
see how you
removal of morality has like allowed them to push the boundaries of science in that field. So now
Yeah.
they know how to do trauma-based mind control, like scientists like really well, and they fucking
Mhm. Well, there you're talking about a
totally
bad
immoral.
leading to a discovery that is used for bad things.
Yes,
I mean, that
you're
there's
right.
also
It's bad all the way.
yeah, there's also bad things that lead to a discovery that can be used for good. There's also
Yes.
good things that lead to a discovery that can be used for bad.
Right. Yeah, it's basically they're just tools. You know, once you apply the intent, like whoever's got the tool in their hand is going to be wielding it in a certain way. But really, truth is truth, and it is, you know, it is a thing. And you know, Tesla made a death ray, you know, and they could use it for good or bad. You know what I mean? Like,
Heard the story of that.
Yeah.
He kept publicizing the idea that he had made a death ray, and when they and because of that, you know, the government did step in and said, you know, we get to raid his archives and find out. And they found out it was nonsense. It turns out, crazy stuff.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, you know, and that it takes. Well, I mean, Tesla was right about so many other things, like the weight of his voice.
Life.
Yeah, the weight of his right. And but I mean, you listen to how he came to some of those understandings. He visualized it in dreams. Like it's really mystical and amazing. Like it's if you look into that dude, he's like incredibly amazing. But everybody can get theories wrong. Like you know, I would like to discuss in another show if like we already have one scheduled, which I'm very happy with. The failed theories, like we kind of get like we used flat Earth as a springboard here to talk about like the understanding of and like how we come to this knowledge, and I would like to look at what we thought was true, like you know, string theory is one of them, and like
recent theories.
Yeah, or even failed ones from the past. Yeah, geocentric. Yes, that was a great example. Geocentrism for today's topic. But I was thinking, like, you know, what has the particle accelerator? How has it helped to narrow that band of uncertainty? You know, because like from your own experience, you know, and that way we can like. And also, I'd like you to explain dark matter for me, because that's something that's still, I haven't grasped the concepts yet. And I think that would be a good exercise for everybody to like, because it seems like one of those things, like in our first show, I was talking about how I can't just accept that the Big Bang happened like the way it is. But then you helped me to understand it. It's just exponentially grew. Like it might not have ever started at any time. Like, and I'm like, oh yeah, like it's just the way that it works.
Since we had that conversation, I've seen this pop up in so many scientific papers.
Really,
that, you know, you just you know when since it was on my mind, I was noticing more because it's generally, you know, in the most cosmologists don't. Well, it's certainly a giant open question whether there's a finite beginning or not. But there's this popular misconception that Big Bang means there was a finite beginning.
Right.
That's the part that's
right. That's how it's traded in common parlance. Like that's how we accept it and throw it around. So I'm glad that you helped to like, you know, figure that, and like, you know, we can understand it better. And I'm glad that you also helped to define the terms. Like black hole in particle physics is not the same. Well, in relation to the colliders is not the same as a black hole, you know, up in the sky that's doing things in space. And so like once we can understand these types of, like, it's a different language, they understand different things, and then once we normal people can accept that and be like, okay, then it's a way of it's a way of understanding what you're explaining. Like flat earth people, a lot of them, they don't understand the science, and so then they don't want to be like, I don't know, so they revert to this thing they believe, that's like, I don't know how much more time you got, but I got a small example. There was this, what really got me going with the flat earth thing is someone shared a meme that was like all this text, and I'm reading it, and it talks about how if a plane takes off from the earth, it must, if the earth was round, keep pointing down again, because it would be flying off into space, the trajectory.
That's right.
But that is in relation to the stars around it. They don't take into effect the gravity at the center of the earth is pulling at a constant, and so that is making it go in around, but they don't accept that. They don't figure that into their science. And like I try to explain it to people, and I like give them this this mental diagram where, like, imagine a pin on a wall with a string, and you attach that to all pieces of the plane, and it's got, and I made it real simple, like really easy to understand.
Yeah, because
the string is pulling constantly, so it's gonna, yes, exactly. And so like they are using the relation of the plane against the stars around and the space around, but really it's in relation to the center of the earth and that gravity. And then so like their misunderstanding of the truth leads them to this, and then they use these memes to convince others that also don't understand to be on their team. So then they have this like ad populum fallacy, like and just the more on our team, the more it's truth.
Meme as form of argument is kind of the central problem there.
Yeah, dude, it's the lowest level. It's scraping the barrel. Yeah, it's really sad. Plus it's all this text, like nobody's gonna really put their attention into like reading all this text.
It's not a meme.
Yeah, exactly. It's like but that's how they, like, that's what they do. They think, oh, how can I tell these globers the truth? And then they make this meme and they put all this energy into it, and then they share it, and then they like, you're dumb because you can't see the truth. It's there, right? And oh man, it's really sad.
Yeah, I feel triggered by that too. Like if someone's doing that, I feel the hairs raised.
Yeah.
And it's like, and I also know that I can't have that conversation.
Right.
Because I know where it's going to go. Actually, because I've been there.
Right. Yeah.
Not necessarily this one, but lots of similar ones. Starting way back with America Online.
Yeah.
Man, they wrote like, no, actually there's the XKCD comic?
No.
The stick figures. Scientists love to share these.
Okay.
XKCD usually talks about science. But XKCD has, there was one panel where voice off screen is saying, honey, come to bed. And the stick figure is on the computer. It's like, no, someone on the internet is wrong.
Yeah, dude.
I know that feeling.
Me too. Yeah. That's
like,
how they get you. That's what trolls do. They say like a couple sentences, and then you're like, rah, and then you're typing it all out, and it distracts you from your wife and going to bed and having like a good life,
Yeah, right.
Yeah, dude, it's a trap. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you so much for sharing your time today, and sitting there in the lobby, and I
Sorry,
appreciate you.
I didn't realize that was going to happen.
No, man, it's not your fault, and like I'm just happy that you're sharing your voice, and that's I appreciate you, and thank you for joining us here today. If anybody wants to, you've got a website that's still running, and it explains many topics of physics, called Coffee Shop Physics. Is that coffeeshop.com? Coffeeshopphysics.com. Can you tell people a little bit about that?
Oh, yeah, it's I wrote it. So in my long, career thing, I was after doing a lot of doing analysis science, right? Like actually in the thick of it. At the beginning of the LHC, I left the field and I went and I was doing computing consulting before coming back into the field as a computer guy. In that time, I felt like, because science is a thing that I just have a strong affinity for, I couldn't like completely give it up. And so I was doing a lot of outreach writing. I mean, what we call outreach in the scientific field is when we are doing writing with the intention of it being read by not scientists. That's what it means, outreach.
Right.
And so they'll be written in some way that's not dumbed down, but is explaining all of the terms that we're using, right. and not going into as much detail. If you want to call that dumbing down, then okay, we have to draw a limit somewhere.
Sure. Well, plus it's in your spare time. I mean, yeah. You can't go forever on there.
Well, also no one can read forever.
That's true. Right.
Otherwise, you try to get a physics degree from reading essays would be kind of hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, coffeeshopphysics.com was the site where I was writing my essays, and I was also putting some into Fermilab today, and I copied those there as well. But when I went back into the field, this impulse was no longer.
Well, you didn't. That was your substitute for your creative outlet, right?
Right. So
coffee shop fell away once you started in the field again.
Has been sitting idle for at least 10 years, but it didn't take it down.
Well, it doesn't lose its value. It's still truth. I mean.
Yeah. And it's what, $10 a year to keep it up.
That's great.
Right.
Yeah, I'm glad you do, and that's actually a lot of money in my opinion. Coffee Shop Physics, people can go and look for common topics of physics inquiry and look up like what dark matter and whatnot, quarks and such. Do you explain these things?
Well, I'm not very systematic, because
it's like a blog, right? I mean,
it's a blog, yeah.
Right.
There are actually the reason it came up recently when we're preparing for this, like say the next time we talk about dark matter,
right?
I have visualizations that I put a lot of time into, and I was looking at it recently. It's like, wow, these are great visualization.
Awesome.
So if we're talking dark matter and maybe dark energy next time, some of the cartoons and data plots and 3D generated things that I made for that can be used for that, but they're also on this site. So coffeeshopphysics.com/talks are talks that I gave.
Awesome.
All of them 10 years ago.
Awesome.
But they have some great the way that I explain things is usually a very visual way. When when I'm in
Right.
physics, and we do things through what we call talks, which will be like 15 minutes or 60 minutes, somewhere in that range. And it'll be just slide to slide to slide, PowerPoint kind of thing.
PowerPoint, right?
Yeah, it's that sort of thing. And my style of that is I'll usually like put on the slide one visualization that is not, eye candy, but it explains the thing. And then like a museum curator, I go around, okay, the horizontal axis means this, the vertical axis means that. This is what's happening here in this, and that's been, that is how I do my scientific communication, talking to other scientists, and it's how I do the outreach. So yeah, so basically kind of not like what we're doing right now, where we're talking and someone could listen to this orally and they would get all of it.
Yeah.
Kind of the way that I present things, if we're getting into like science and explaining a scientific thing, I'd really want to be showing these visuals, and you'd have to look at the screen.
Yes, well, I do. I will post our next one and this one on Odyssey and BitChute and Rumble, so people will be able to visually see what we're going to be talking about. And like last one I did as well, and we got to see a picture of you with your head inside the collider, like right where the particles collide. That was great. So we will have that available next time when we do talk about. I'm very excited to talk about dark matter and dark energy.
Okay.
Because it's such a wild idea to me, and it doesn't.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is a wild idea.
That's great, but that's what particle physics is like. That those are the kind of things you get to think about when you're in that kind of realm. Like, I'm thankful that you're bringing that to the table and you're going to share with us. And thank you for letting me talk it out about the idea of how we know things that we know, and like the cognitive dissonance and how that's necessary for further explorations in science. It's great to hear from a scientist's point of view about people that believe non-science. There's a fun exercise for me, and thank you for sharing today. So everyone, please visit coffeeshopphysics.com and check out his talks at coffeeshopphysics.com/talks, and we will look forward to seeing Jim here again in our future, maybe in a month or so. Thank you kindly, Jim. And thank you all for listening to Wake the Dead.